Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling too.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Today's guest is Michael Klim. Michael is a father of three, elite swimmer, Olympic and Commonwealth Games gold medalist, businessman, entrepreneur and health advocate. He was awarded the Australian Institute of Sport Athlete of the Year in 1998 and 1999 and received an Order of Australia medal. Michael broke world records, yes, records, at the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, instantly shooting him to stardom, making him a national hero and a household name. Michael then backed up his Olympic performance at the 2006 Commonwealth Games, winning gold, solidifying legendary status and winning the hearts of aspiring young athletes worldwide. Michael's training regimes from back in the day are still very much entrenched in his psyche. He dedicates his time to personal training, managing his businesses, coaching swimmers, and this year he even trained his children's school team to achieve the best results the school has ever seen. True story. I'm always intrigued to meet people who found their calling early on in life and then dedicated their whole life to it. Michael is the epitome of this. He's just born to do it. You only have to look at his arm span to realise that those things are more like props on a large boat. These days, Michael lives in Bali and today he's here to share his experiences, challenges, triumphs and hopes for the future. Michael Klim, welcome. How are you, brother?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Good.
So, what did you get up to this morning?
Mate, not much actually. Just we made pancakes with my little one, and a lot of work, bunch of emails. So just a normal day, really.
The emails just not stop.
No. Unfortunately, being an entrepreneur, as you call me, when you own your own business and. You sort of delegate to a bunch of people. They keep coming.
And how are the? Is it businesses or you got more?
No. Predominantly, Milk and Co is my main business, which is a lifestyle sort of brand, which is skincare for men, women, and babies. So we've been operating now for 11 years now. So we've kind of gone through all the ups and downs and all the traditional sort of trajectory of a business where, we're self-funded and then we needed capital, we had private equity injection, then we new partners, etc. So, and then now it's really I'm very fortunate enough to kind of have this lifestyle by design where, I've chose to live in Bali. Obviously the kids go to the green school, as you mentioned, so it's sort of I get back to Australia probably once a month to to connect with the team. I used to be very much probably be the first one in the office and the last one to leave. So a lot of things have changed, but the business is still running on.
How many staff do you have?
We have around a dozen staff, but we also have a team in China as well. So it's a small team, but we outsource a lot, and we pride ourselves on creating sort of a greater branding in terms of formulations and products, etc. But we work with really great sort of retailers and great distribution partners. So so we focus on the things that we're good at, right? Rather than doing, you can really sort of sometimes sell yourself thin a little bit by trying to do too much.
Are you as excited about it as you were when you first started it?
Look, it's been
Or is it just cruising along now? You've got it set up how you want it. You've got your lifestyle by design. I love that term. So you've got your lifestyle by design, and you're just happy for it to kick along, or have you got aspirations for it to grow bigger and bigger?
Oh, absolutely. I feel that it's, we've been going 11 years, and it feels like it's been like a flash, and for me, I feel that we've, I think I still have aspirations of the business becoming almost a global brand. I think we're very well recognised in Australia. We're probably distributed in about 13 to 14 different countries, and quite well known in Asia. But I think there is still great opportunity for the brand to grow. We've recently rebranded our baby offer, our men's offer. So retail doesn't stop. The consumer trends change. Economically we always change. So I think for me, I'm pretty excited on what. It's not necessarily skincare per se, but it's about how do you sort of nurture, evolve, and innovate a brand.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was doing some Google stalking of you last night, right?
Yeah.
And I realised we're the same age, dude. In fact, I'm actually slightly older. And then that led me to my next thought was because you were born in 77, was I.
Yeah.
And so some of the best people I know were born in 77.
That's right, it's a good year.
It is a great year. And then my next thought was I wonder when he started going bald. Because I'm bald as well.
Well, I actually was a conscious decision. It was the trials of the 96 Olympic Games in Sydney.
Yeah.
I had very thin sort of blonde hair from the chlorine, and it was more of a sign to I wanted to make my first Olympic team, so I shaved specifically for that meet to show all my competitors how serious and how I was, and that was kind of probably the first time I ever shaved specifically for swimming, and it kind of remained. I tried to grow it back a couple of times the next couple of years after that, but it never really, but it stuck, I can't imagine myself with hair. I'd love to have facial hair like you, but I'm a bit sparse in that space.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. I'm not going to shave two things on my head. It's either going to be one or the other. So but I really think your look is iconic in Australia, that bald head, and I've got these images of you at the Sydney 2000 Olympics, and it was daunting, and I really thank God for people like you and Kelly Slater who actually made baldness look cool, in my opinion.
Oh, thanks.
Because then I was especially for me, Kelly Slater, because he's a little guy like me.
Yeah. I
was thank God, Kelly.
Yeah. It's funny because I think especially Eastern European men too. I've got Eastern European background. I was born in Poland, and now I've gone back to Poland recently, and I think we all have kind of heads that suit bald, the bald look. So so every second male guy in Poland has got a shaved head, pretty much.
Do you think, this is a serious question. Do you think that led you into wanting to develop skincare products?
It kind of inadvertently kind of led me in that direction, because I was being a swimmer, and obviously having a lot of exposed skin, and being having a shaved head pretty much my entire career. I was approached by a couple of skincare brands to help them to be an ambassador, etc., and that sort of kind of led me to think, maybe I can do something of my own, and started the sort of, I guess, the the concept of creating my own brand, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, I kind of like it because I think there's a lot of stigma around. I think it's changed a lot in recent times, but back in my younger years, in our generation, it was if you led on to other blokes that you were using skincare products, it was you'd get ridiculed, you'd get hassled for it, But I don't know, do you feel like you kind of changed that stigma in Australia?
I don't know if I've per se. It was definitely been a big change, I think there's a number of things. I think, guys, being a bloke anywhere, or mainly in Australia, it's super competitive. Personally, professionally, everyone wants to, kind of be the best version of themselves, kind of thing. And I think Australia have definitely led away in let's say fashion, and I think grooming we're always a bit behind. And just to give you a stat, on average, a Korean man has about 7 or 8 skincare products in his bathroom, and the Aussie guy would have probably only 3, maybe 4 now. But so we're still a long way behind the rest of the world. So looking after your skin, it's now becoming a norm. Whereas back, when I launched the brand in 2008, we were certainly, men were still using soap.
Yeah.
most of the guys.
That was it. Like, I'd wash my face with a bar of soap, and I don't even want to tell you where else I use that bar of soap.
No need to tell me.
So anyway, like, you grew up you were born in Poland, but
Yep.
you grew up in Australia.
Yep.
Which part of Australia?
I grew up in Melbourne, so I was 11 when we arrived. I had a pretty interesting upbringing. My dad worked for the Polish consulate, and we spent 4.5 years living in India, in Bombay, and that's where I learned to swim. So for a country that's renowned for probably the cricketers and a lot of other things, I kind of, I met my swimming teacher still. She's still alive, and she's fantastic, and she's the one who created my future, really, pretty much.
Do you think like, how old were you then when you first started and met that particular coach?
Oh, I would have been 1.5, 2. Yeah.
Just
so,
doing
basic
learn how to swim.
I would do learn to swim. So pretty much, it's funny how kind of history repeats itself, because I now live. Well, my kids live a very similar lifestyle to what I lived back then. That having that sort of expat kind of upbringing, where my dad used to drop me off at the equivalent of Fins and pick me up a few hours later after work, or when he had to do finish a few things. So my life was very similar to what my kids are experiencing at the moment. So I was exposed to the water from a very early age. I think I learned to swim the same time I learned to walk. So
who was it that identified your talent, you think, early on?
I'm not sure who it was. I think I was very competitive from a very early age. I was always pretty driven in a sense that I wanted to chase older guys in the squad and try and beat them. So I don't know why I was so competitive. I was never really pushed, which was credit to my parents, where they probably developed values in me that sort of I had that purpose without them having to push me into the sport. So I remember waking my dad up at, say, 4:30 in the morning to take me training, rather than the other way around, where parents wake up their kids to take them training. So, I think it's, I give them a lot of credit for shaping me in that sense. I feel that they sacrificed a lot for our future. Obviously, they traveled around the world a lot. We lived in Germany and Canada, and then eventually in Australia. But and so I had this kind of, a bit of a cliche, but I had this kind of sense of purpose from a very early age, that with all this stuff that was changing around in my life, from languages and schools and friends, and the thing that remained constant was the swimming pool. So I went to Germany, I joined the swimming club. I went to Canada, I joined the swimming club. So, and when I arrived in Melbourne, I think I signed up to the Melbourne Vic Centre Swimming Club before I even enrolled at uni high, which I think for me, swimming was always that fraternity, that community that I really related to.
And you learnt that early on.
Yeah, I think I was, and also as a kid, right? or as a youngster, you kind of want recognition. You want, and because I was pretty early. I was from an early age. I was pretty good at swimming. I had a couple wins early on, and being recognised for that kind of led me to pursue it.
So you started to develop, like, to be identified by it.
Yeah.
And you sort of developed your sense of identity with it.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I find you literally just have to meet you to see that your physique is designed to swim. So, like, when you were a youngster, did you just have a growth spurt and you were really tall, and you had a long arm reach, and it just felt right straight away? Or like, what was that feeling you had? Like, did your body just feel good in the water straight away?
You would not believe it, but my nickname is Lumpy. And I've got I had two nicknames. So at school, my nickname was Chunky, yep. and my nickname in the swimming club was Lumpy. And the reason was I was a very chubby, fat kid. So I guess I had a frame. The frame was always there, but I was an overweight kid that I think I only lost my puppy fat. I think maybe at the age of 15, maybe 16. So look, I think I've only really just started appreciating the affinity that I had with water and swimming and the movement and everything.
What age?
For me, it was more just that, the drive of seeing how fast I could go and, how many sort of, national titles I could win and all that sort of. It was more defined by that. But now I appreciate the skill and it's, for me, it's a more mindfulness practice now. I swim nearly every second day, and
so the passion's still very much there.
Oh, absolutely.
Is it more pure now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I swim for a different reason. I don't sort of measure obviously I occasionally look up at the clock, but I don't, it's more for the feeling that it gives me, like it is very much, you're in a completely different medium. You can't see properly, all your senses are thrown off, and, there is a saying, you'd never regret a swim, because you sort of, it's like, for me, having meditation.
Wow. So, because I often think that being a professional swimmer would be often lonely. You're in the water, there's water over your ears a lot of the time, and you're looking at that black line going up and down. So it becomes very much like a meditation, you said? Or?
Yeah. Look, I think when we were...
Or does it get lonely?
When we were training, in the lead up to say the Olympic Games in Sydney, like to give you an average week, we were in the water probably 10 times a week, swimming between 50 to 70 kilometres a week, so 5 to 7 Ks a session. So we're in the water for up to 2 hours. So it can, it is repetitive. It can be lonely at times, but I think. I see people on treadmills and gyms reading a book, and I sort of say, I just can't. I just don't understand that concept, because even when we were swimming, for being in the water for 2 to 3 hours at a time, even if you're focusing on that movement and what you do, what your body's doing, you're actually, time goes a lot quicker if you're focusing on stroke and your breath, etc. It's like doing a 90-minute yoga class. It doesn't feel like 90 minutes sometimes.
But
so
also, like, you're connecting with the natural element of water.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that comparison you just drew with someone on a treadmill reading a book. Okay, they might be getting their heart rate up, but what are they really connecting with?
Yeah, exactly.
It is odd. I've always found that. Actually, I think that they need to connect those treadmills to the grid, and then those people put power back into the energy grid.
Absolutely.
We can talk about that another time. The next question I've got for you is, can you just run us through, as a youngster who was identified as someone with talent, and you would, maybe through your early teens or late teens, I don't know, through that period of your life, can you run us through, like, what was your training regime like? Like you mentioned before, it was 4:30 starts. Give us a week in the life of teenage Michael Klim.
Yeah, so as I was, when we sort of arrived in Australia, where first I went to a public school called University High School in Coburg. I was probably only training once a day, so it wasn't as rigorous as it became later on. But we used to live in Moorabbin, which is about 40 minutes away. So Dad used to drive us to school, which is north of the city. Then I'd go swimming training after school, finish around 6 p.m, go home, eat dinner, and fall asleep normally at the desk trying to do my homework. But as I got older, it's probably the age of sort of 14, 15, and I got a general excellence scholarship at Wesley College. I started swimming twice a day, so morning and afternoon. And it became, I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I literally had 2 bags, or probably 3 bags. I had 1 bag of food, 1 bag of my swimming gear, and my 3rd bag was the school bag, right? So I was literally, so in the pool at 5:30 through to about 7. I used to get on the tram down St Kilda Road to Wesley College, complete a full day of schoolwork, go back to the State Swim Centre, back in the water between sort of 4 and 6, head home, again, eat dinner, try and do some homework. The amount of times I'd fall asleep at the desk was, and in double English or at school. It's but the teachers knew that, and they wouldn't, I had great teachers that could see and encourage, my pursuit that I was so driven towards, and they would do anything to help me get through my schooling because they knew
they admired your commitment.
Yeah, they admired that, and I think it was great because I was doing it in the International Baccalaureate at the time, which I was one of the first sort of years in Australia to ever do it, and so it wasn't an easy curriculum for me to even try while I was training. And I did year 12 via correspondence because I got tapped on the shoulder and they said, would like you to move to the AIS in Canberra. This was at the age of 16, and where they were picking the squad for the Sydney Olympics. So this is 1994. So the last the last year or so of my schooling I did via correspondence, so which is even harder.
So did you? You said you had a lot. The teachers supported your vision, but did you still achieve academically, or did you just sort of do what you needed to do because swimming was such a major part of your life?
Look, I think I have some regrets in the sense that I didn't continue into tertiary education after. I did okay, finishing my IB and got a reasonable score. I think it was just over 70% which was okay in regards to what I was doing. But now having started my business, or having had my business for over 10 years and being involved in many others, with my dad, having had swim schools, having done property development and things like that, where I've learned so many different things through life. That regret is not as strong as I initially thought, because I had a bunch of friends who were still doing, there's a couple mates of mine that finished law while they were swimming, and I was like, this is just, how could they do that? And I always admired them for being able to accomplish that. And I was probably at the time where mentally I just couldn't grasp the two, so I gave up. I started commerce at Monash, and the second semester I was out of there. So you transitioned straight from high school, which you did grade 12 by correspondence, transitioned straight to university, but at the same time your swimming career was just about to explode. So that would have been around 96? Yeah, 96, yeah.
Yeah, and so 96, in terms of your swimming career, was a significant year because that was the Atlanta Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was your first Olympics?
Yeah.
How was that experience?
So, okay, it's amazing, there's so many people always talk about you have your toughest moments in life, probably the biggest lessons and the biggest learnings that you take on with you for the rest of your life, and that happened for me, and on so many different levels. So I had a great coach, Gennady Turetsky, a Russian guy. He sat down with me before the Olympics and said, "Oh, you got to be even." So I qualified. I qualified number 1 in the world. So I was going into. I was 18. I was freestyle, 200 freestyle. So I was going to Atlanta, ranked number 1 in the world. I guess had the expectation of probably the entire nation come home, with the gold. But he sat down with me a few weeks before. He said, "You got to be prepared for anything. Anything can happen." And I was a little bit naive, and I said, "Gennady, I've just done so many, PBs. I'm on the right trajectory. I believe that this is my time. I'm gonna, win gold in Atlanta." And so, cut the long story short, I
Be long.
I missed the final. So I missed the final of the Olympic Games by 6/100ths of a second in the event that I was expected to win. There is a thing called the psych sheets when you walk into a swimming pool, and it's literally they call them psych sheets because people get psyched out by them. It's literally how you're ranked in each event and what heat you're swimming in, and and I was the first day, I was the first name on top of the first page. So I think that that first day really. The butterflies that I felt in my tummy, I was so overawed by the whole occasion of what the Olympic Games were all about. I couldn't find my coach, I couldn't find my team. I was just
probably you cameras in your face.
Yeah, there was just it just proved to me that I probably wasn't mentally tough enough. And so, I tried to swim. I swam alongside Daniel Kowalski in the heats, who qualified, and he ended up swimming in that final. And but out of that moment, I've got a couple pictures of me sort of crying on my mum's shoulder that afternoon. That's where a lot of my changes and a lot of my key learnings happened, because I realized, okay, so even though I was training with Gennady Turetsky, who also had Alex Popov, who was regarded the greatest sprinter of all time, he was in my squad. I was trying to swim like him, emulate him, and I wasn't. I'm tall. I'm 6'3", but I wasn't 6'8". I wasn't swimming like the most economically, economical style like Alex had. But so I had to. So there's a lot of things that I changed. So within the most fundamental thing was my mental toughness. I didn't want to feel on the blocks like I did in Atlanta, where almost my knees were kind of banging together from nerves. And I embarked on this sort of mission of doing about 150 competitive races in one calendar year. So I was literally almost standing on the blocks somewhere around the world, from Lake Burley Griffin to Japan to America, wherever, just racing. So racing became automatic, and I realized that I had to find what I was as an athlete and what made me tick. And I was quite athletic from a sense that I used to play other sports, basketball and tennis, and I couldn't swim like Alex. That was the stroke that Alex developed for himself. So we innovated, really, myself and Gennady, I guess a stroke that suited me. So I was the first male really to start swimming with a straight arm recovery. So that windmill sort of stroke was. So
let's just clarify that straight arm recovery for people who don't know. It's when you actually bring your arm out of the water and reach it past your head.
Yeah.
And then you're actually hitting the water. Yeah. And then do you then break the elbow and pull your hand under your chest?
So your actual stroke underneath the water, the pull through still remains the same. It's still in that in the S shape and having a high elbow. But the actual recovery is very much straight arm. So what it enabled me to do, it gave me a lot of inertia to be able to throw my arm forward, and I started engaging my hips a lot more, and I even developed a freestyle stroke with a butterfly kick, which is even, I started doing that in some at the end of some of my races, which just helped me to keep momentum. So I was racing every second weekend. I changed my stroke to straight arm. I was very fortunate enough to work with Speedo, and we were in that when they were developing the super suits or the fast skin suits. So I was working with them super closely on just building almost becoming more fish-like, where the suits were super tight, they had panels. We wanted to become more rigid, because as you fatigue, generally your body starts to sag, your hips start to sag in the water. You want to stay as straight as you possibly can, so you can cut through the water. So we work with Speedo, and you know what? It took me a long time to utilize the resources that I had around me, and I had this great team of, best biomechanists, best physiologists, best physios. Obviously my coach was fantastic, teammates as well, and that was probably another learning. So, and this all was happening really fast. So, the disappointment of '96, by October of '97, I broke a world record in 100 butterfly, which wasn't even really my event. So, it's amazing when you can implement changes, or you change your mentality, how you can.
So let's go back to, okay, so when you finished the Atlanta Olympics, and you said you realised that your mental toughness wasn't where it should be.
Yeah.
This is what triggered that ultra competitive. Would you almost describe it as like that period thereafter was you discovering yourself as a competitor? So all that stuff you just explained, like all of a sudden refining your technique, finding techniques that worked for you, even working with a swimsuit company to find. Was that all because of the would you call it the hard experience that you learned at Atlanta?
Yeah,
you think that was a real pivotal moment in changing your. Did you go, I need to become mentally tougher, so I'm just going to compete and get comfortable in that realm. Yeah.
So I think for me, with the competitive part was that, so that the competitive process became automatic. So I would, obviously I was training a lot, but I was able to. It's very hard to mimic the intensity and the pressure of racing in the training pool. So I was able to practice my. I was one of the better underwater swimmers, so I practiced my underwater kick in the race, and I had a certain amount of strokes I wanted to do on my second 50, and I was trying to hit that every time I raced, rather than hitting that in training, which it's much easier to replicate in training rather than under race conditions. So, so I think I realized that I needed to become more resourceful, to become tougher. And work with the people around me. I couldn't just. It wasn't going to come easy. People think that I was in a very, as hard as that lesson was of missing the final in Atlanta. If that didn't happen, maybe if I made the final, maybe got a medal, I probably I'm not sure if I would have continued on to break 20-odd world records. And I had the world record in 100 fly for around 6 years, and developed some new techniques, etc. So I think it was as you said, pivotal moment. It was a tough one at the time, but it certainly shaped me as a person, two as an athlete, and I certainly talk about it a lot.
and then it was just all focused on Sydney from there on.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, I'm not going to make the same mistake I did when I get to Sydney.
Yeah.
Is that where you're at?
Yeah, look, it's, the thing is, you can make a huge mistake by just thinking about that one moment. The thing with racing so often is that I was trying to, you have to perform under any condition at any time, rather than just in Sydney. And unfortunately, I won world titles, won Pan Pacific Games, Commonwealth Games, and for me, Sydney individually didn't come out the way that I wanted it to. So There was so much focus and so much expectation from the Aussie public, the hype. It was. We were so lucky to have had. I had the World Championships in Perth, then we had the Pan Pacs in '99 in Sydney, then the Sydney Olympics, but to have that attention and the corporates behind us, I mean, it was just an amazing era in our sport. To share the pool with the likes of Ian Thorpe, Grant Hackett, Susie O'Neill, Kieran Perkins, Liesl Jones, Libya Trickett.
The golden era.
The golden era of the sport. And so for me, I mean, it's not just. And it's funny because people always talk about, what is team culture and what are the team values, and I don't think we ever spoke about it. People were kind of I don't know, it's kind of unwritten. It was unspoken. People were just, I got to watch Kieran and got to watch Hacky do phenomenal things in training, and you're rubbing shoulders with your teammates, and if he's doing that, well, that raises the bar for everybody.
That lifting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe can you describe to us that moment you feel just before you're about to walk into an Olympic arena for a race? Is it just sheer butterflies, or did you learn to manage it better?
No, I certainly learned to manage it much better. I think the more butterflies, the more uncertainty, the more doubts, the more thoughts. I think that's I think you're either underprepared or you're not quite ready. And I think for me it was a matter of simplifying that moment, because I was one that was very easily aroused. I could get myself pumped in about 5 minutes, and I could.
How did you do it? Through music, psych up music? Was it just mental?
Just mentally, just breathing, just
do this?
putting on the goggles or just walking. Just literally when the moment of walking out behind the blocks and looking up in the stands and looking down that lane, because I did that race 150 times, it just trigger. It was just like a trigger. So for me, and it was more about, so I used to try actually keep my mind off the racing process for as long as I possibly could, because I had practiced it a billion times. I mean, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So it was more about, because, and when I was younger, I would have swum the race in my head about 100 times. I would have, the night before, I couldn't get to sleep because I was, I have to get a good break out. I have to accelerate into the turn, and I have to do this and that.
Overthinking it.
And you watch some of the greatest athletes of all time. Let's say Michael Jordan. Jonathan Thurston is another great example, and just so instinctive. They don't even think about a lot of the time things that they do.
So, is it safe to say your confidence was coming from your training? So you knew you'd done the work.
Yeah.
So, and as you got older, you just learned how to. Just go. Okay, I know what I've done.
Yeah.
And just being.
And you have to trust that process. The process. Yeah, because a lot of people, I think there's look around the shoulder, I should be maybe doing something else. And nowadays, through social media and the world, the swimming has changed so much, where people are actually, training in different nations, and there wasn't much sharing of information when, let's say 20 odd years ago. So we were wondering, what are the Americans doing? What are the Germans doing that we should be doing? But it's really trusting the process. I think that's the key.
Trusting the process.
Yeah.
I love that. I've heard that term before, just trust the process. And it also, just what you were saying then, reinforces to me that there is no substitute for hard work. And as I get older, I realise that more and more. Like, there's no easy options.
No.
Now, can you tell us about a coach that you had that was really influential on you, that probably had the biggest impact on your athletic career?
I had two coaches that were, and both had probably just as much influence on me in different ways. And one called Gene Jackson, who was my first coach in Melbourne, and he saw the talent in me, and he saw the potential in me. But he could have very easily pushed me to do more training, to but he made me focus on my schooling more. He made me hang back a little bit. He kept the fun process in my training for a lot longer than we used to have gambles, for example. So he said,
Okay.
if you can do this time, you can get out of this. You can just go home.
Okay. Like you make a bet with you.
Yeah, like he'd bet with you,
And you found that fun? Yeah.
and and to this day, we used to have sets. We used to call the Shangould 50s, or we'd play Sharks and Minnows, so he was, so fundamental in my career because he hung back in a sense that he could have started, hammering me in the pool from a very early age, but I just loved swimming. So why take that away from, I just loved being in the pool in that environment. So he was, and then also the fact that he recognized that when I did get to a stage where I needed better infrastructure, better expertise, he passed me on to Gennady Turetsky, who became, I guess, moving out of home at the age of 16. He became kind of my father figure, my mentor, because, I would literally do everything he would say. So, and he was an interesting character. He was the son of a Russian general.
Okay.
From the Soviet bloc, a very smart guy, a swimmer. He was hard. I think he was smart in the sense that he was hard on the people that needed to be hard. He didn't have the cookie cutter approach. For example, you mentioned Laurie Lawrence, where in his squad, in Australia in that era, in say the 70s, 80s, even before that, it was it's survival of the fittest. Person that can endure this training regime generally wins. Like your Duncan Armstrong, your John Seaburn, and they're the people that survived the training generally won. But nowadays, that's where the progression in sport has come, where it's become so much more individualized towards the athlete. You create the programs around them, and I think Gennady was one of the first coaches that started doing that. Really, sort of rather than having a squad of 20 swimmers all doing the same thing, we would all be doing something completely different. You had your own individual
training plan,
yeah,
based on your needs.
Yeah.
So and you just talked about that before. You said after Atlanta, you started you said you were trying to swim like Alexandra Popov.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you were like, well, no, that doesn't work for me. This is my body. My body's different.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny because I have to remind myself, even just as a PE teacher, I have to remind myself of that with kids. Like what's an example? Like, here's how you throw a javelin. Like, this is the textbook way of doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily work
the
same. So I've had to sort of let go of that.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you so after because I was very much. I grew up in the same era as you, and I remember those Sydney Olympics. It was huge news. I feel like your face was just every time you turned the TV on around that time. It was just. How did you deal with the media onslaught that you sort of received afterwards? Did you did you enjoy it, or was it just overwhelming? Can you describe it to us?
Look, my relationship kind of with the media. Changed at times changed probably once or twice because I think I was always you have to be honest with the media and you have to be transparent, because if you start playing games and you start being sneaky or whatever, I think I was always very fortunate that the swimming writers and the swimming media were always very supportive, and they obviously wanted us to see us do well. And if you start, not treating them with respect, they can very easily turn on you. And I had one occasion where I had a bad race, and I took it out on a journalist, and to this day I still regret it, because it wasn't her fault that I swam the way I did, and she was one of my biggest ever supporters, and did she just
you get out of the pool, you've just swum your guts out, and then someone shoves a microphone in your face. Like, it must be hard to manage those emotions, like, from a human level.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to manage, and sometimes, you know, like you know, you see sometimes these cliched answers because, you know, you're still processing what's happening. You know, like sometimes it's not
Your adrenaline's been through the roof. Yeah.
And you're half the time I don't. You know, even now, 20 years on, you know, I'm processing some of the things, or, you know, I have some memories that I thought, actually mean different things to me than what they did at the time. So it's quite interesting. So, but yeah, it is. Look, I think we were, I used to remove myself from the media at times. So we would train overseas a lot. I used to train in America a lot. And just because, as you said, we were always, you know, there was always press around. We're pretty much open door policy. They could come on pool deck, and they always went. Look, and it was always very positive. Was adulation, but I think, you know, that can also be slightly distracting.
Distracting. Like, did you find it hard to not get caught up in that, in terms of, you know, gaining some fame and notoriety? Did that distract you from your focus and your commitment to your swimming, because it was like, oh wow, there's this whole other lifestyle out there now?
I was fortunate enough that it didn't. I think maybe afterwards a little bit, in a sense where I was probably you know, I thought I could do both. You know, I thought I could do probably, you know, reap the rewards of I guess the notoriety and the fame, I guess, and also maybe miss a little bit of the hard work. You know, you can't. So you know, I learned my lesson the hard way a couple of times. So yeah, but I was, you know, the reason why I retired and called it quits, it wasn't because of any of those sort of reasons. It was basically because my body started to kind of fail. It wasn't, I still had the ambition, I still had the drive, but unfortunately, you know, there's a guy called Eamon Sullivan who came along, and he took over in the 100 free from myself, and Andrew Lauderstein took over in the 100 butterfly. You know, Thorpe was flying along, and he'd already taken it to the next level. So yeah, it was a really tough realization, because mentally I still wanted to do it. Physically, you know, I had a bunch of shoulder operations.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean,
dealing with that was tough.
Did you had a lot of injuries, or you were fairly free from injury?
I was fairly free from injury for a while. It all started with rolling my ankle really badly, playing basketball, which then led to a prolapse disc, to then led to, you know, having you know, really bad shoulders and having shoulder operations. And as a swimmer, you know, we do about 3,000 shoulder rotations per session. And I had, you know, dealing with that was quite tough. And that was probably, I had about 18 months to qualify for the Athens Olympics in 2004. And I couldn't even lift my arm up over my head. So I kind of had a bit of a battle and a mission to get to Athens. But I wanted to be part of that community. And, you know, to give you an idea, like the sacrifice that I would make, I would come down and I used to put a snorkel on and kick up and down the pool for 2 hours, just so I was part of the group. You know, I'd get down there, I'd still stretch, still talk to the coach, still
It's home for you.
It's home. And it's, you know, a lot of people, I think sometimes when there is negative things that happen in their life, the natural emotion or the natural kind of act is to withdraw themselves or remove themselves. So I think as athletes, I think now in team sports, they're very good at focusing on the things that you can do rather than the things that you can't do, you know. So especially in, you know, I'm not sure what it's like in PE, and, you know, when you got, you know, kids that are slightly, if they're sick or injured or whatever. But I think I've always, you know, even now as I'm older training, you know, if some days I don't feel like going for a swim, but the variety of exercises you can do is just endless. So it's just focusing on what you can do rather than what you can't do.
Yeah. So what's your daily training like these days? You said you still get in the pool, but what else do you do? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, have you maintained your health and wellness? Like, do you do yoga as well and stuff like that?
Yeah, I used to do yoga. I think for me, it's kind of a I try and keep it pretty balanced, you know. So I think I still really enjoy the intensity of training. So if I do HIIT training or if I go into the gym, I really try and push myself pretty hard. And I think that's where the physiological change happens, the mental change happens too. And I use swimming probably for a different reason, as I mentioned before, more that meditative kind of. It's my space, you know. Sometimes I jump the fence here actually and swim in the neighbour's pool because it's quite big, and you know that's my space, and but I think it's all about keeping it varied, you know. And it's, as you mentioned, you know, we are in our 40s, our bodies aren't as resilient as what they used to be, so and I found the hard way that I have to listen to my body more, and I can't do the things that I probably was doing, say, 5 years ago. I used to do adventure racing just because I felt like it, you know, and there's no way I could do that now.
You train smarter now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm really about now, is trying to really train smart. Anything like to minimize injury. Like,
yeah.
Like I still very much love surfing and I love skateboarding.
Yeah.
I just love it, you know, and but now I'm in the back of my mind. I'm like, nah, put the ego aside. I don't need to push myself as hard as I used to, because I want to still be doing this for as long as I can.
Yeah,
I want to be doing it when I'm 80 years old. You know?
Yeah.
And once I had that mindset, I'm actually enjoying those little things more and more. And like you said, would you say you enjoy swimming more than you ever have, or is it just different?
It's different. I think I still enjoy it though so much. Like it's a skill that I have that it's so kind of innate in me. And it's, you know, just jumping in and, you know, like even some of the things we used to do, you know, in training I still do now, like just trying to jump in and swim, see how far you can swim without taking a breath, for example, okay. You know, or just swimming underwater and just shaking it out and just blowing out all air. Just it's almost like it's kind of you know, if I add up the amount of hours I spend in my life in the pool, you know, it's like my second home. So I still love it, and you know, it's not a coincidence that, you know, kids with autism or kids that have mental disabilities, or it's, you know, they take them to the water, you know, like and it's such a great medium for, you know, like changing your mindset or whatever it is, you know, like it's just a great movement process too. Your body growth from, you know, obviously, you know, physically from, you know, cardiovascularly, muscles, all that sort of stuff,
mental health.
And then mental health as well.
Do you want your kids to be competitive swimmers, or are they already?
Well, I think I don't think I think they like swimming in the sense they can do it pretty well. Rocco loves his tennis. He's actually just around the corner at the tennis camp as we speak. Loves his tennis and basketball. Stella loves his surfing. But they spend, they're in the water all the time. I haven't seen, and look, obviously they're different people. They're different, gene pool. At the age of say Stella's 13, I was already very much on. I kind of had set my path already, and so not to say she'll find her own path in a different area, but so yeah, like I sort of try and facilitate whatever, and there's sometimes there is. I mean, there's a great example with Rocco, not this year, but last year's swimming carnival, BSSA, where he was really sort of timid, didn't want to swim, didn't even enter any events. And so the night before, I I rang ahead of swimming and I said, "Oh, can you enter Rocco in every event, please?" And sometimes people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be pushing kids," but to what degree, so I convinced Rocco. I said, "Rocco, I just want you to. I know you feel uncomfortable. You haven't. There's other kids that do a lot more training. People probably watching you because you're my son. But I just want you. You're naturally a good swimmer. I just want you to get in there and compete and have fun, enjoy yourself." It's an amazing story because in the first event he sits there, super timid, and in the freestyle just comes second and loses, and he's but he's so already like that experience from him not even wanting to be there to almost winning was already had completely changed his idea of what that race was all about. Half an hour later the breaststroke comes along and he ends up winning the breaststroke. So from the night before he was standing right here crying, saying, "I'm not going to swim, I haven't trained, there's better kids there, there's expectations, blah blah blah." For me to it was a moment I could have said, "Okay, don't worry, maybe next year will be your time." And then this year he came through and completely different attitude. I think he swam. I think if there was more events, he probably would have competed in them as well. But he came away with a couple wins, and it was that. But that wasn't the objective. It was more just walking in there with open mind and
to get him out of his comfort zone.
Exactly.
Yeah, kids don't know. So this is, as a father too, as a fairly new father, that's where I struggle.
Yeah.
Because I'm a surfer. I want my kids to be into surfing so bad. Anyway, my daughter's 4.5, cannot get her near the ocean, won't even go up to her ankles. Yeah. And I'm just it's killing me inside. I'm like, no, but but then it's this fine line of you've pushed them too hard. Yeah. They get a negative association with it.
Exactly.
It's where do you find the line? Yeah. And there's this pro surfer, Jamie O'Brien. I watched his movie once, and they interviewed his dad when he was talking about when Jamie was a kid, he didn't want to surf and he didn't want to compete. But he's like, no, we live in Hawaii. You're going to surf and you're going to be the best surfer at Pipeline one day. You're just doing it, Yeah. And he just pushed him out there. Go out, paddle out 10-foot Pipeline when you're 12 years old. Do it. And now Jamie O'Brien reflects on that. It's like, thank God that my dad did that because I would not be where I am today. He's made a really lucrative career free surfing. He's actually gone in a really weird direction. He rides soft tops at 15-foot Pipeline and stuff like that. But he's a freak. But when you started saying that, I just started thinking about my kids, and I'm like,
and it's and then for me, obviously I had that really tough lesson in say 96. I obviously I had other kind of negative kind of learnings or negative experiences, I should say, that were learnings in my life. But 96 was that big one. But for Rocco to be able to push through those emotions, to realize that it's only a race, that and it was just for him, just character building, and was so proud of him for getting through it, and then approaching swimming and the carnival this year completely differently, I'm really proud of him for that. So if he continues to wanting to have that same attitude into tennis or basketball, whatever,
he's a good basketballer.
He loves it. He's got a great shot. I had to put a curfew on bouncing balls because he was up at 6 o'clock bouncing the ball, shooting from here, and I was like, dude, we've got neighbours that probably want to sleep. So he puts in the hours in the things that he's passionate about. Yeah. And that's what we touched on earlier, that you have to put in the work.
Yeah, and it's like Stella's love for surfing. I've surfed with her. I can just see it. She lights up the second she gets in the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wish my daughter would, but anyway, let's not talk about that. She'll get there. I mean, she's only 4.5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a learning curve. Yeah, I'll support her in whatever she wants to do. So, I guess living in Bali, you know, what are some of the key challenges you've had now since you've been, you know, in another country with a young family? I mean, do you feel it's a good place to nurture young people and their interests?
I think definitely the Green School has been great for my kids in a sense from their like a personal development point of view. It's been really good, especially Rocco from his confidence. Rocco had a speech impediment, so but like he was almost he's a sensitive kid, and you know, like being able to you know, manage that, control that in different environments, and then also with Stella to realize, you know, she's super creative, and to be able to get up on stage and be, you know, like you know, lead the school play and things like that. So from that aspect, it's been fantastic. I think from that point of view, Bali's been great, and it's much more of a unstructured lifestyle really than, let's say, you know, where I'm from originally in Melbourne. So I think they've experienced both now. They've been back to Australia plenty of times, and their cousins live there, and I'm very happy with them living here. I think they've been. I think if they want to pursue some things further, they may have to leave the island because of just that's, I guess, where Bali's at, and if it's sport or academics or whatever it might be. But I think you know, it's an interesting place where there's so many creative people with different mindsets and that think differently, and so I think they've you know, if you can't, I think it's, yeah, I mean, but it seems to be transient, you know, people pot. Yeah, exactly. So people don't tend to ever settle down here forever, you know. Okay. So I think you know, I believe it will probably end up being the same for my kids and my family, where, you know, we might find that we'll move on. Not sure. You don't have any, like, so what's next for you? What's next for Michael Klim? Is it more coaching, more business, more both? Do you have anything, you know? Yeah, I think for me now, it's really, I think obviously, you know, the kids are getting a bit older, so focusing on their, I think, yeah, for me, I made a conscious decision to reduce travel, to spend more time here in Bali, to be more present in their life, and to see them evolve and grow, and help them with, you know, those difficult conversations or decisions or whatever it might be. And yeah, so I think I'm still very much excited by you know, building brands and continuing to build Milk & Co, and there's still opportunities there, but being able to do it the way I'm doing it now, I'm pretty excited. So I try not to look too far ahead sometimes. You know, I used to do that, and probably wasn't really in the present moment enough. So you know, yeah, at the moment it's nice, it's stable, and I'm really kind of enjoying life as it is. So, nice. Got the 3 kids, Frankie, Stella, and Rocco. You know, and it's it's all good.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful, man. Like, yeah, like I feel the same actually. Like, I was striving.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, especially I think when you have kids, you realise, hang on, I'm striving too much. I'm missing out on them growing up, you know.
Yeah.
And before you know it, they're not going to want to know you, or they're going to be off doing their own thing. So
yeah, exactly.
It is a short time, isn't it?
Yeah. And look, even with my personal arrangement, when you know, my ex-wife Lindy lives just around the corner, you know, where the kids drop in whenever they want. We're very flexible now. It's sort of it's great that they have you know, they feel comfortable. I think for me that was also a really, you know, important thing for them to know that I'm here for them no matter what. Yeah. And they wanted structure and they wanted stability. So and that's it. I think I probably needed it too. So here we are.
Yeah. I'm hearing you. Well, man, I think that's a beautiful way to end. Is there anything else you want to add? Or?
No, look, I really enjoyed the chat actually, because
Awesome.
I sort of, you know, like, because in a lot of interviews, you know, you kind of skim through a lot of the topics, and you know, we went pretty deep, so that was good. I enjoyed it.
There's no time there. I'm happy to talk all day, dude. I'm on holidays,
We'll do
brother.
episode 2 one day.
Yeah, you can tell
Do
us.
one out in the surf.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. I have to get a waterproof microphone or something.
No, it was
Well,
great.
man, it's
Thank
been
you.
epic, and high five, brother.
Thanks, Shane.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right, have a rad day. Let's go grab a coffee or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
See you, mate.
Cheers.